Solo Leveling is a story that, much like Squid Game, has a lot to say about the capitalistic rat race that many working class individuals find themselves in. Despite taking place in a fantasy version of Korea with monsters, magic, and dungeons, the struggles that Jin-Woo faces in this fictional world has many parallels to the real-life struggles faced by many people today. In the various discussions I've heard about this story, there's a lot of talk about how cool the fights are and how great Jin-Woo's power development gets in the manhwa. However, when starting the anime itself, I couldn't help but notice how allegorical Jin-Woo's story is to the trappings of modern-day work culture, and how the world of Solo Leveling says a lot about how unchanging the state of people's lives can be under a system like capitalism. So I thought it would be interesting to point out some of the underlying socio-political messaging within Solo Leveling and dig into what Jin-Woo's story is truly about. So without further ado, grab your E-rank knife and step into the capitalistic dungeon with me as we explore the political and social commentary behind Solo Leveling. Already from the first episode of the series, we understand that the hunters awaken their power levels when the magical portals first appeared, and they are completely unable to change their power level in any way no matter how hard they try. Hunters are sorted into ranks based on their power level. These ranks range from S tier being the highest and most respected and powerful rank, all the way down to E tier, the lowest, weakest, and most disposable rank. With these class ranks come perks such as having a better reputation, better loot, better mission placements, and most importantly, better income. S ranks are paid the big bucks since their strength is so sought after, while E ranks take the scraps after the rest have had their share. Already, we are seeing a similarity between how the class rank system works in the anime and how real-life socio-economic class systems work. The S rank hunters awaken their power levels through happenstance. Despite not doing any work of their own, they are suddenly entitled to wealth, fame, and power without needing to lift a single finger to achieve it. This is not unlike how billionaires around the world are usually born into their wealth and acquire intergenerational wealth, power, and influence. The highest class, whether that be the S-rank hunters or real-life billionaires, are the most privileged and powerful class. But that doesn't mean that they earn that power or deserve it in any way. They just happen to awaken to or be born into it. On the other hand, E ranks represent the lowest socioeconomic classes, those who are born into poor families or families that have experienced intergenerational discrimination and the disadvantages that come with it. They start off at the lowest socioeconomic level and find it very difficult to escape that level due to various obstacles in their way. Obstacles such as increased cost of living, lack of access to education, or lack of access to resources in general. And when they are stuck in low-paying dead-end jobs that they need to stay in to make ends meet, and they're working more hours than their peers, all the while getting taken advantage of by bosses and managers who also utilize capitalism to exploit them of their wages, the opportunities for them to advance in society become less and less available. Eventually, the lives of these disadvantaged folk become a cycle of worrying about the next bill, showing up to work praying they don't get sick, otherwise they'll have to lose out on pay, and it becomes nearly impossible to get to a higher economic level. Enter Sung Jin-Woo with his boring main character haircut. He isn't just an E-rank hunter, but he's actually nicknamed the weakest hunter of all mankind. Jin-Woo, through no fault of his own, awakened to be the weakest hunter possible and has no hope of changing his life situation. To further emphasize the theme of economic disparity, one of Jin-Woo's motivation is to earn enough money to support his hospitalized mother. Healthcare in countries such as the United States is treated as more of a privilege earned through economic success, rather than a right that all citizens should be entitled to. Those in the S rank or the highest socioeconomic levels don't bat an eye at a random doctor's visit or a trip to the ER. However, when you start off in a position where it's difficult to pay rent or get groceries without going over budget each month, a hospital bill can sentence you to a lifetime of medical debt. This seems to be the situation that Jin-Woo finds himself in due to his mother's condition. Through no fault of his own, and despite him being a very hard worker, our protagonist is forced into a position where he has to financially bleed out just to get his mother the care she needs. This is just one of those various obstacles I mentioned earlier that keeps those in lower socioeconomic positions from advancing up the ladder. Despite the setbacks that he was given, Jin-Woo continues to work as a hunter since it was the most viable avenue of employment. Each time that he enters a dungeon, due to his low rank, he is the one that ends up taking the most damage. This symbolizes how financial hardships and unexpected life obstacles can hurt those living in poverty the most. Let's say your car gets totaled, for example. If you're a millionaire, getting a replacement car is nothing more than a small inconvenience. However, to the average working class person, losing your car can set you back financially for years. Not to mention, for many people, a car is often a necessary means of transportation to earn money, so you can't really afford to go without one. The constant damage that Jin-Woo takes doesn't deter him from raiding dungeons because otherwise, his mother and his sister who both depend on him financially will be let down. So he continues to risk his own life on a daily basis and takes in all of that pain. The anime even makes a point to let us know that he can't even afford to buy better gear to defend himself in the dungeons because of his rank. And he's basically forced to use the hunter equivalent of a butter knife to take on these monsters with. This all goes to show that the Hunter Association is inherently capitalistic, refusing to provide adequate protection and weapons to their soldiers who are risking their lives every day to raid the dungeons. The association forces them to buy equipment, essentially saying that you need to pay to survive. The Hunter Association essentially exploits the labor of lower rank hunters like Jin-Woo without providing him appropriate compensation or adequate materials to keep him safe. We know that the association's resources are abundant since the mana stones collected by the hunters from the dungeons are extremely valuable. They have no reason to keep their weapons and armor behind a paywall other than corporate, capitalistic greed. And if it wasn't abundantly clear, this lack of access to resources is a clear representation of the wealth inequality in capitalistic systems. The higher your rank is, the more powerful and durable you are, and the lower your rank is, the weaker you are. If you are in E rank, you might as well have glass bones and paper skin. This means that those who need weapons and armor the most, those in the E ranks like Jin-Woo, have the least access to those resources. Meanwhile, the S ranks, the strongest among them, have more resources than they even know what to do with. When Jin-Woo was given the option of exploring a risky and potentially dangerous double dungeon, his economic obstacles stemming from his mother's hospital bills was the main driving force behind him taking on that risk. This is not unlike a blue-collar worker picking up double shifts or picking up a riskier second job when they need more money to support their family, which is something that someone in a higher socioeconomic position would likely never even need to consider. Jin-Woo also wasn't the only one who cited monetary struggles as their reason for voting to take on the double dungeon. And at first glance, this risk was worth some extra pay. However, this extra dungeon, this double shift that Jin-Woo decided to take because of his financial struggles, was something far more dangerous than he could ever imagine. Jin-Woo's quick thinking and self-preservation instincts came in handy to save some people from the party. He then figures out the statue's puzzle, which takes us to our next example of this story's allegorical take on capitalism. The final trial of the statue of God requires every single person in the room to stare at one respective statue until the timer runs out. If any statue within the room isn't in someone's line of sight, it will proceed to attack. This trial required the cooperation of every single hunter, every single working class individual in the room to succeed. All they had to do was wait and they would all survive. After everybody ran away to save themselves, the only people left were Jin-Woo, his friend crush Chu-hee, and the party's armless leader Chi-Yul. The leader offered to sacrifice himself so that the two young hunters can leave, but our protagonist knew that without his leg, there would be no way he would be able to carry out Chu-hee. And so, without any options left, Jin-Woo watches as the last survivors of his party of hunters, of people who are more well off than him but still need to work to make ends meet. People who are all also trying to survive. They all left him for dead. He watched as all the survivors used his soon-to-be lifeless body as a stepping stone to safety. It's the classic prisoner's dilemma. They could all either wait until the timer runs out and trust in Jin-Woo's words that they'll all survive, or they could run out the door and guarantee their own survival. I wouldn't necessarily say that the people who ran away were bad people, they're just taking the most logical and guaranteed option for survival. This prisoner's dilemma that the hunters find themselves in lends itself to an aspect of capitalism we've yet to discuss. That in order to survive in a capitalistic system, those in lower or working class positions often have to compete with, exploit, or step over each other. This is what it means to be in a rat race for economic prosperity under a system like capitalism. Whether it means outcompeting your coworkers for a pay raise or outperforming other applicants to secure any means of employment in an increasingly unstable job market, avenues for employment under capitalism are marked by their scarcity and forces the working class to claw at each other's throats to get ahead. Selfishness is a necessary component of advancing under a system where hoarding wealth is not only applicable but encouraged. One where the top 1% gets to keep a majority of the wealth, and everyone else has to fight each other over the remaining scraps. So naturally, the ones born with the least resources, born with the least privileges, or in Jin-Woo's case, awakened at the lowest rank possible, would be the person that gets left behind, gets stepped on and sacrificed for the survival of everybody else. It echoes real-life situations where a company has to lay off a single employee and everybody tries to outperform each other to make sure that it's not them. Jin-Woo, the most expendable hunter, the most expendable employee, was put on the chopping block. His dying thoughts reverberated through his rapidly fading subconsciousness. He lamented how unfair society was, how he hated being the one to be sacrificed, and how only selfish people get to survive. Again, highlighting how selfishness is a necessary component to surviving in this inherently capitalistic world. And right when he was about to become another victim, another statistic in a long list of have-nots who lost their lives due to inequality, he receives the power to change his fate. The power that Jin-Woo was given by the system requires him to be selfish, something he acknowledged is the only way to get ahead in this world. The manhwa's other name is literally "Only I Level Up," indicating that working for and taking care of yourself is the best and only way to advance as a player like Jin-Woo. And if I haven't beaten this dead horse enough, it's the only way to advance in the socioeconomic ladder under capitalism. I've heard that Solo Leveling was praised for how awesome its action scenes are, but seldom see many people talk about its themes of inequality and selfishness being a key factor in the world. I've also never seen this story explored through the lens of it being a take on capitalism before, but the connections I've made here made a lot of sense to me, especially when you consider the ranking system within the Hunters Association basically being allegories for socioeconomic rankings. Thank you all so much for sticking around all the way to the end of the video. Leave a comment below about your thoughts on the video and Solo Leveling as a whole. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time with more lukewarm takes.